chatting with Hunter, and I'm super thrilled to have him with us. My name is Landon Bench. I'm president at FYTT, and FYTT is software for strength and conditioning coaches. And tonight we have Hunter Lakey. Let me give a quick bio on Hunter, and then we'll turn the time over to him. But once again, thank you all for joining us, and Hunter, a huge thanks to being with us. So Hunter Lakey was named as an assistant director strength and conditioning coach at Georgia Southern University, where he oversees the baseball team and women's soccer program. Before his time in Statesboro, Hunter served as the assistant baseball strength and conditioning coach at Mississippi State University, and he was also at Elon University Sports Performance Department. He has spent time in the state of Texas with Texas A&M football, and also at TCU, Texas Christian University. He's a native of Burlington, North Carolina, a bachelor's in exercise science from Elon University, and he's also CSCS certified, AED, and CPR certified. So once again, Hunter, we are thrilled to have you here. I'm going to turn the time over to you and let you share your presentation. We'll just jump into it. Once you're finished, we will open that up for Q&A and let you kind of field some questions for us.
For sure. No, Landon, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here for you guys. Now, first off, I just want to say, Landon, thank you so much for having me. Shout out to Corey, who also reached out to me and asked me for this. And after a couple of different hurdles and vacation times, finally being able to make this a reality, I appreciate you. And I appreciate all you guys for being here. So when it came to choosing my topic, I wanted to find something that was something that my Instagram or something that a phone call wouldn't do justice, or a text message, right? I get a lot of DMs and a lot of messages from people asking whether you're a high school coach or a high school player or a college coach or a college athlete, asking, hey, like, how do I structure my training? How do I structure my programming? How do I structure my throwing program? Like, all of that is such big questions to ask in such a small space like a DM or a text. So I wanted you guys basically to give you guys the blueprints of how we go about things here. I'm not a man who's going to gatekeep things. I think that for me, when I can better the field and better everybody else, I think that goes a longer way than just giving you guys bits and pieces. So I want to kind of give you guys my take and my experiences on how I kind of run a high performance program here at Georgia Southern. So talk about the key takeaways here for this presentation. You guys saw obviously in the bio, but the first thing we're going to talk about is how to organize a year-round training program within the realm of collegiate baseball, right? Top of that, we're going to understand how to use a high-low model to consolidate stressors between our practices, bullpens, and the weight room, obviously, as well as understanding vertical integration, the foundation of my program and its place in developing and training speed, power, strength, etc. throughout the year. So to start, I want to talk about a couple important concepts to note, concepts that are important to my philosophy and concepts that kind of resonate true within a lot of the programs that I've been a part of. Some of this may be a refresher, some of this may be new. I give you guys a lot of examples, a lot of information on these slides. I'm going to go through and talk about some of the key highlights. And then obviously, if we have more questions, we could talk about at the end. But this is kind of the philosophy and the principles that I use for my program. Start off quoting Charlie Francis, the legendary Olympic sprints coach. I say this to our coaching staff, to my guys all the time. We got to keep our high days high and our low days low. That is the mantra that we utilize for our training sessions and our principles. For a sport like baseball, it's all about outputs, right? We're chasing outputs. We're chasing speed. Everything in the sport of baseball is measured by a velocity or an output. So in the end of the day, if we are not fresh, we're fatigued, those outputs are going to be lower. So I always say that to our crew. Then the high-low model. Okay, this is created by Charlie Francis. Basically, how he interprets it is you take your 2 training days and you separate them into high and low intensity stressors, right? So your high intensity days we'll talk about later in this presentation are going to be your days where you focus on your max speed, your power, your lower body, your high motor unit recruitment movements. They're going to be your very, very high output driven days, all right? While your low intensity days are going to be your days where it's a built-in recovery, right? I'm not talking about mobility, but I am talking about being able to have a different day compared to your high intensity days. So while we're doing our high intensity output days on our high CNS days, our low CNS days are going to be more low motor unit recruitment driven, stuff that's not going to fatigue the athlete to a greater extent. All right. Essentially, this model creates a 24 to 48 hour window between our high intensity sessions to allow for recovery to happen. Right. We want to make sure that these high intensity outputs we're experiencing, the athlete can go after the session and recover to be able to make sure that the next time they see that high intensity session, they're fresh, they're ready to go, and they can be able to increase that output from the last time. In an ideal model, our high intensity days are stacked together with the high intensity sport practices, the training room, as well as anything else they may have outside of the weight room as well. And so going over our high intensity stressors, again, these are our most stressful days of the week. I tell our guys this all the time, right? If you come in the weight room and you lock in for 2 days of the week, it has to be these 2 days. We typically term our money days because they're usually the most important days of the week. And on these days, we're really working on maximizing max speed, so max velocity, sprint mechanics, power, and lower body strength adaptations, right? These are the movements that are typically going to be the best bang for our buck and that translate the most to the sport. And so we need to make sure that our guys are locked in and ready for those days because these are the days that matter. Okay. For us, and I'll talk about how we pair these within our actual practice sessions on the field. We pair our high intensity stressors on the field with our high intensity stressors in the weight room, just to make sure that our guys are staying on high and keeping our high days high. And then obviously, when I talk about low days here, I'll tell you guys that we pair our low days with our low days, right? Not rocket science on that. Then again, we're just looking for that 24 to 48 hour window between the two sessions. That way, then we have our high day, right? High stimulus, let's recover, and let's wait for the next one. Couple examples I have written off to the side here. You can see here in the chart, a couple examples separated between pitchers, position players in the weight room. Again, out of any of these qualities, whether you're a pitcher training with me, whether you're a position player training with me, typically whatever you're experiencing that day. So if you're a pitcher and you're throwing a high intensity bullpen, you will be hitting that high intensity lower body lift as well as our max velocity sprint day. Usually, honestly, the most high intensity stimulus that a pitcher or position player is going to get is stimulated between our scrimmages and our live games, right? So when you get into fall ball and you're looking at inter squad scrimmages, typically the days where our pitchers are throwing live or our position players are competing in inter squad are going to be the most high intensity taxing days of the week because not one just from a execution standpoint, because now they're actually playing a high intensity game at a high level, but two from an adrenaline standpoint. First couple games of the season, first couple inter squad scrimmages of fall ball, guys are competing. They're competing for spots. Their energy and their adrenaline is ramped up. Outputs are going to be higher, right? Typically, that's what you see. So those are going to be our highest days of the week, and so those are usually going to pair with our higher days in the weight room. Typically, when I talk about this, when I talk about high CNS, when I talk about high intensity, we talk about high CNS fatigue, right? And all that simply is, just to put it simply, is just overexertion of the nervous system, right? The central nervous system is responsible for the ability to repeat high intensity outputs. So we have to make sure is on these high CNS days, we are being able to exert that and take advantage of that to reach higher outputs. But we have to focus on exercises on the following slides here that are not these exercises, right? So if you're looking for ways for your athletes on the field to be able to recover from high CNS sessions, it's probably not going to be found in this list. You're going to need to follow the list that I'm going to give you guys on the next low intensity slide there. For our pitchers, when we get into the fall, we're going to schedule these days around our throwing schedules, which I'll give you guys a full breakdown on how you guys do that, as well as our position players. We're going to schedule that around our harvest days of practice throughout the fall. Our low intensity stressors, again, they're that recovery day. It's not a mobility day. It's low to minimal fatiguing activities, low motor unit recruitment stuff that isn't going to actually put the athlete in a greater hole previous to the other day. Again, it allows our body to be able to recover between the high CNS sessions. You can do a lot of things on these days. You can do isolated low motor unit recruitment activities, work capacity, aerobic training, mobility, 8-vector or change of direction work, jumps, anything that isn't going to be a high stimulus that the body is experiencing can be done on this day. And I'm actually a big fan, I'll talk about this, is that you can actually do a lot of high intensity rotations and intensive medicine ball throws on these days, because compared to the stuff that you're going to do on your high intensity CNS days, it's not going to, be as impactful as your sprint mechanics and your jumps and anything that's going to be very, very high intensity on a scale, right? And you can see here on this motor unit recruitment chart here, at the very end of the left here, right? Maximal sprints all right, at the very end, right? It's 100% motor unit involvement right here. I'm going to touch a little bit on max speed, which is the core principle of our program, but I just want you guys to see that for reference later on that. Another thing that Charlie Francis talks about here is that on these low days, a lot of people like to say, oh, we'll just have a medium intensity day, right? These low days have to be low, okay? Because what Charlie Francis talks about, if you remember on the previous couple slides from that chart, and a lot of you guys have seen it before, is that medium intensity days are too high to elicit any kind of recovery, and they're too low to elicit any kind of high intensity adaptation. It's this weird limbo phase where we're not getting either or of the spectrum. So when in doubt, again, you have to keep your low days low and your high days high, right? Otherwise, you're putting guys probably in a worse spot if you're just going to give them a medium to moderate stressor. Again, examples of low intensity activities. All right. So you just had a high intensity day the previous day before, right? You're a sport coach. All right. So the previous day, the following day, what can I do that's now going to be low intensity on the field that is going to tax athletes less? So usually for us in our program, when I talk about this, it's usually situated in drill work. Our position players do a lot of cage drills, batting practice, BP on the field, stuff that's not touching max velocity or that's not a high amount of volume on their feet is really, really good for these guys in those days. And usually, in my experience, guys come after they did before and they feel pretty fine. There's a big contrast difference to your days where they're high in volume and intensity versus, yeah, you're doing something on the field. It's still at a high intent, but it doesn't draw a candle to the stuff you did the previous day. Again, like I said, your intensive medicine ball throws, if they're low in volume, are not taxing enough to cause that sinus fatigue. So you can do a little bit on those days as well. And typically these days are going to be a shorter day in the weight room and a shorter day on practice for us. Going into another concept here, just going into the topic of vertical integration, I want to talk to you guys about residual training effect. A lot of you guys know this, but it's basically the shelf life on each biomotor quality that you have, right? So for strength, speed, power, strength, endurance, all of those qualities right there, they have a certain shelf life that they have. So you have to be able to touch up on that quality throughout your training to make sure that, number one, that quality is increasing, but number two, making sure that that quality doesn't decrease. Okay. So if you can see on this chart, maximal speed work is obviously the shortest quality that tends to go away after a long period or a short period of time. So for us in our program, we train maximal speed pretty consistently. I'd say probably on a weekly basis, touching max speed once a week and acceleration once a week as well. So we usually have 2 speed sessions throughout the week just because that's one of the biggest factors for us, but that's also the quality that tends to detrain the fastest. And then also looking here, maximal strength, it's around 30 days to around a month. You're looking at those days, and when we talk about in-season training, you're saying, all right, so I need to hit a high intensity maximal strength stressor in season. When's the next time I can hit it? I have a little bit of time. I don't need to hit it back to back to back, but when's the next time I can hit it? And I'll talk to you guys about how I go about planning my maximal strength days in season as well. And kind of bridging the gap from this into vertical integration. Vertical integration is the program that we use when it comes to programming, when it comes to planning out our exercises, and using and understanding the residual training effect allows us to be able to hone into our specific qualities when they need to be trained and when to leave them to the wayside if we don't need them. So vertical integration, all right, popularized by Charlie Francis. Zach Dakin was the first person to put me on this, and he's spoken a lot about this. It's basically a training program situated around training all the biomotor qualities at once. So you see the biomotor qualities at the top: aerobic, power, hypertrophy, strength. I even like to put the skill in there as well. Like all these qualities are qualities the athletes experiences throughout their training, throughout their time within the athletic program. It's important to know when each quality is emphasized and which quality isn't. So typical traditional training systems in the past train qualities in blocks, right? So you have your power block 1 month and you have your speed block 1 month and your strength block 1 month. But the problem with that, if you remember from the residual training effect model, is that with speed work, you can't just train it within a monthly time frame. You have to train it consistently. So within my program in vertical integration, if you were to sit down, I would hand you a sheet of paper. The qualities of skill, power, hypertrophy, strength, and even aerobic, and maybe a couple other qualities like rotation and deceleration are going to be in the program at all times. When I sit down and write it, I try to make sure those are all present just to make sure that they're all there and we're still training them, but just variable dosages. They're never removed. They're just, like I said, in lower dosages. And again, I can pick and choose, like you see that graph there, which ones I want, depending on the time of year. That's not a finite graph, obviously, on how we go about it, but that's just an example that I've made in the past of how we use vertical integration. So you can see, obviously, where our speed, power, strength, hypertrophy, is emphasized, and also where the skill of the sport is emphasized as well. It's a very efficient way for us, especially in season, and this is why I really like it for us in season to be able to continue to train in season and not just maintain. And then kind of putting into action for you guys, right? I can tell you guys all about this, but I kind of want you guys to see how we utilize it within our program here. And on the right, you can kind of see some of the methods we utilize for our biomotor qualities. But when it comes to vertical integration, you can imagine your athletes like a cup of water, right? These athletes only have so much energy to distribute to each of these qualities. So you have to be able to pick wisely, okay? If these athletes are in season, for example, or they're in fall ball or preseason, a lot of their cup of water is being poured out in the skill of the sport, right? So that means that you're going to have less freshness. You're going to have less time to be able to focus on maybe putting a lot of volume into strength or a lot of volume in hypertrophy, right? So you need to make sure the primary qualities that they need for that time are there and they're fresh for it. It's a pretty simple process. It's as simple as just programming more volume, more intensity for the quality you want, or placing it first in the program if that's an emphasis for you. And again, you can see now at the bottom how we go about utilizing these qualities, and just some examples of speed residuals and how they're seen in the weight room as well. All right, so going into the annual plan, all right, I talked about these concepts. I just wanted to make sure that everything that we did kind of relates to how we go about things, because now we're going to dive into how we plan throughout a season, starting from directly when they step foot on campus in August to when they finish up the season on the back end. So with the annual plan, right, I want to talk about our training days. Our days based on the high-low model are separated into high intensity and low intensity days. Okay, so based on the right, you can see a small video clip of some of our high intensity training days for some of our guys. Every session for me starts off going fast to slow, right? That's how my exercise progression is done. And obviously for me, I want to make sure my guys, the most impactful movements that we're going to do are done at the very beginning of our lifts, right? Because I want guys to be fresh. I want guys to be ready for that. So we start off on our high intensity training days with a dynamic warm up and our mobility, a general ramp up period, a general mobility, being able to target robustness and trying to target maybe any stiffness they might have for the day. And then we go through a snappy warm up. All right. Our speed development starts off with prep time for sprint work, right? So that starts when maybe, depending if it's a max velocity session, starting off with our dribble series, starting off with maybe more specific technique drills like PVC pipe runs, like you'll see in the video, whether they're overhead or out front, along with actually being able to time and track our max outputs when it comes to our sprint velocities, with obviously lots of rest time. For sprint work, you got to be fresh to be able to do that. So that's the very first thing that we do in our program. And then from there, we kind of bridge into our power development, which is second on the list here. So if I'm looking for power development, we'll finish our speed work. We'll go in the weight room. We'll hit a power development block with a couple jumps, maybe trap bar jumps, tendo jumps, whatever we may be looking for. But for me and my program, I like to start out doing a complex where usually what we'll do is we'll take one of our main lower body compound lifts and our strength block that you see there, and then pair it with a power development like medicine ball throw or a jump mat or a tendo jump, one of those things, just to be able to take a high motor unit recruitment movement where it's going to be able to recruit a lot of muscles, take that and put it into maybe a weighted jump or an altitude jump or an elastic jump. And then from there, being able to put the guys on a jump mat and being able to get a measurement that's going to quantify them, whether that's a force dominant movement, a vertical movement, whatever you're trying to test for that, right? And then usually on these days, I don't like to make it any more complex than it needs to be, because the speed work is obviously our biggest bang for our buck. So we'll do our typical arm care, serratus, upper trap, low trap, rotator cuff as well, our posterior chain volume, usually in the form of an RDL or a glute bridge. And then we'll always finish, like I said, fast to slow. So we finish up these workouts with ISOs. It's great for the tendons, great for the athletes in terms of being able to find different positions. And for me, on our low intensity days, we usually hit a little bit of ISOs and extreme ranges of motion to be able to build strength at extreme ranges of motion. And then always we end the session with recovery, band traction, hangs, lap breathing, stuff to be able to take that high CNS, that central nervous system, which was ramped up this entire session, and then take it down a notch so it's back to homeostasis. So these sessions are going to take around 60 to 90 minutes of time. They're a little longer at times, but they should be, just because we're trying to be able to maximize our performance on some of these qualities. Our low intensity training days are going to be the exact opposite. Again, we'll start off with that dynamic mobility, maybe some change of direction drills. We'll do a little bit of 8 vector jumps, jumping in different vectors like around a clock. We'll do some change of direction if you want, some deceleration work. And then we'll just work on mobility, maybe a more specific mobility like in the hips, arms, scaps, etc., and go from there. In season, what I like to do is I like to throw that in there too. We do a 3-station prep. So this is something that I found from my times with other coaches is that when we get in season sometimes, or maybe we're in fall ball, I give guys 3 exercises instead of a dynamic warm up. So when guys have been on their feet all day, they come to the weight room. I give them 3 exercises to do. It's usually like a med ball throw, something explosive, a mobility, and then an activation. And then from there, it's 3 movements in. We can train new movements throughout the week or throughout the blocks, and it just gives us a little more versatility and a little more freshness for guys. So we're not sitting out in the hot sun doing a mobility and dynamic warm up for 15 minutes. From there, we go into our strength development. So it's our main upper body lifts, our compound lifts. They're not going to be as stressful as our lower body lifts. And then we'll do the same thing, kind of pairing that with some of our power development, med ball throws, jumps, depth drops, upper body plyos, fast rotations, anything along those lines there. And then our accessory movements, usually on these days, we'll still target arm care in some form or fashion. I like to target rotation on these days. So while guys are getting a lot of high like velocity rotations in their swings, we like target a little bit more heavy rotations on these days. And then our core work as well, which is going to be in the form of just our rotation work, but also maybe a little bit more isolated work in our dead book series for pelvic and thoracic motor control or something along the lines, maybe a little more advanced than that. And then our recovery. Again, 45, 60 minutes should take less time. I don't want these guys to be in the weight room too long. I want them to be able to come in, get their work in. Let's have a good day. Let's get out so we can recover for the next session. Finally, going into kind of the bread and butter of how we go about things, our max velocity sprinting. Okay. One of the most powerful movements the human body can ever produce is a 95 plus effort sprint with maximal recovery. Right. I showed you guys that motor unit recruitment chart right there. Maximal sprinting is up there with any other movement. And for me, this is the best bang for buck that I see within our program. All right. For us, fresh is fast. I say that all the time. When we sprint, I want to make sure that our guys are well rested. They're not fatigued. We are fresh at all times. So, like I said, on our high intensity days, we'll typically do max velocity sprinting once a week. That's usually going to be on our highest day or our highest practice day of the week. And what we do there is I'll warm them up. I'll go through a good warm up, making sure their body's warm. We'll do a little bit of speed drills here, and then I'll pull out the timing gates and I'll have these guys run anywhere between 20 to 30 yards. For us, it's probably about 25 yards because an athlete reaches top end speed around 18 to 25 yards. Anything pushing past is being able to hold on to speed. But that right there is kind of the sweet spot for testing max velocity. If you don't have timing gates, perfectly fine. Simply telling guys, hey, I want you to run 25 yards as fast as you can is a stimulus enough, right? Timing gauge is just a good way to be able to track and be able to test this metric. Usually with our max velocity sprinting work, Zach Dakin says it a lot, right? I'm quoting him a lot, but he says this all the time. Sprinting is the tide that lifts all ships. Usually when a guy sprints and he reaches the top end velocity, he usually tends to start to trend upward in any of his qualities, whether that be a higher lift for the day, a higher jump mat number. And I've even seen it where guys hit a PR on a sprint and the next day they go out on the mound and they hit a higher top end velocity if they're a pitcher. It's something crazy how the body works. But for us, like it's almost like with a sprint plugging in the body to an outlet. It supercharges the body, fires everything up, so that everything alongside it starts to increase as well. Looking at this as well, I want to kind of categorize what speed work is and what it's not, right? We're chasing outputs on speed days. We're not looking for fatigue. We're not looking for guys just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Like that's not getting the message. That's not making guys faster. That's not building outputs. For sprinting, we want maximal rest. For every 10 yards that we run, I give these guys a minute rest. So we run 30 yards. I give them a minute rest in between just because it allows the body to be able to recover back down and the guy can be able to execute another high intensity effort. Speed work is not sprinting with little to no rest. Gassers or 110s, speed ladders, standing on a Bosu ball and calling it speed work. It's none of that, right? If you want to get fast and you want your athletes to be fast, you have to be able to expose them to maximal sprint work. There's no exercise in the weight room that even comes even close to touching the high intensity rate of force development and outputs that a maximal sprint does, right? Typically, we'll do this for about, I'll progress guys out. So I don't start guys off right away with 30 to 25 yards. I'll increase guys by 5 yards each week. So we'll start off with a 10-yard acceleration. I'll build guys each week by 5 yards out. And then from there, when we reach our top end velocity, where that's 25 yards, we'll stay there the rest of the season. We'll track that throughout the season there. Now, going into the fall outline, right? I'm going to tell you guys, I'm going to show you guys a lot of graphics on how I go about categorizing our guys, our lifting schedules, our throwing schedules on lifting days. This is how I categorized Georgia Southern and how I categorized it as well at any of the stops that I've been. So the individual period, right? This is day one when your guys step on campus. It's a 5 to 6 week period for us. So from August 19th to October. And for us, this is training 4 days a week. For me, I'm a big advocate on training movement competency first and foremost. I don't care how much weight you can put on the bar. I don't care how much weight you did when you were back in high school or the previous school, right? The biggest thing that I have to make sure within the program is teaching and reteaching, even our returners, these made movements, right? So when we're doing a split squat, being able to understand pelvic motor control, being able to stay stacked, keep the rib cage underneath the pelvis to ensure a more efficient transfer of forces from the ground up, right? Teaching speed work. You guys don't understand how difficult, and some of you coaches understand how difficult it is to teach an A series or a dribble series to a new player, right? It takes a lot of growing, it takes a lot of learning. They're building the neural pathways to build these outputs and to build the capacity to execute these at a high level. So I spend a lot of this week here teaching movement competency, right? Higher reps, sets, if you will, being able to give guys a lot of opportunities to be able to execute these movements. And as well, when we get in the program, a lot of my program is individualized in the fact that when we first start off, it's position and pitcher separate. Okay. So our position guys are going to be doing stuff that's different from our pitchers, but not to a great extent, right? So our pitchers, maybe instead of doing a straight bar bench press like our position guys will, they will instead football bar or neutral grip bench, right? It's just small little adaptations where the message is still the same. The things that I'm trying to hit, the big buckets are still being hit. And we're still really, really focusing on movement and competency for this first 6 weeks to prepare them for fall ball, right? So what I like to do is I like to take the first couple weeks, again, emphasize movement technique and then add weight as the movement starts to look good. So I tell guys all the time, I don't want the weight to dictate the movement. I want the movement to dictate the weight, right? So if a guy looks good, he's moving it really well, he's moving it with intent and speed. Then from there, I'll say, hey, let's throw on more weight there, right? And then I additionally, like I said, it just builds general robustness. I'm not looking for anything crazy. I'm just looking for guys to be able to get back in the swing of things, being able to build a little bit more general robustness like hypertrophy and strength. And then we're still going to obviously target our speed and power work as well on the jump mat and building ourselves up in top end velocity. For us, how we go about it for an ideal 4 day model, okay, this is how I pair it in the weight room, but also on the field. Mondays are going to be our high intensity days in the weight room. All right. These are also our high intensity days on the field. When I sit down with my coaching staff at the beginning of the semester, I say, hey, look, all right, I'm going to have 2 days. I'm going to have a high intensity day and a low intensity day, and we're going to hit that twice a week. All right. This is what I need. I need you guys like to tell me what day is going to be the most taxing for you guys. For us, our Mondays are going to be our defensive days. It's a lot of chasing balls in the gap. Our outfielders are touching max velocity. Our infielders are moving around a lot. They have a lot of time on their feet. They're doing a lot of high intensity sprints, a lot of high intensity movements. They'll even maybe touch on some base running stuff. These are the days where they're going to be the most taxing for us on the field. So sitting down, I say, all right, that's going to be our high intensity days. Because for me, I want to make sure that my high days are high and my low days are low. Because if my high days are high and my low days are also high, we create monotony. We create stress. The human body, like I said in the high-low model, can't recover. So that's where we start to get injury. So in our high CNS day, again, that's going to be our max velocity day on Monday. Guys have the weekend to recover, come back on Monday, get a good measurement on the max velocity. It's the freshest point they're going to be during the week. It's going to be our elastic emphasis. So quick, twitchy jumps, focusing on the tendon there, pogo hops to start off. And then we're going to go into our split squat, our unilateral movement, which is going to be probably our more taxing movement in terms of our lower body compound movements. And so what they'll do, well, typically for me, what I think works is we'll do our speed testing. I warm up the guys prior to their practice. We'll go through a snappy warm up. We'll do our dribbles. We'll do our mobility. I'll time guys. I'll send them off to practice to do their defense. And then from there, they'll come in the weight room after and we'll hit our weight room testing. Again, I want to make sure guys are fresh. On my end, that works. Just because for me, I want to make sure guys are the freshest I can be when I take that metric, that speed testing metric. And then our low intensity days are the day after. That's our travel warm up, our egg vector, change direction, plyo, any of our upper body lifts, our arm care, and our rotation work as well. And those days are going to be our offensive days on the field. So guys aren't touching any high velocities. They're not touching high intensity sprints. They're just rotating. They're doing drill work. They're in the cages. They're doing BP. It's nothing crazy. Guys say they feel pretty good coming in the weight room, maybe a little sore from the previous day, but they are not sore from the training session they had there. And then from there, as you can see, you can start to see a trend, right? So we're off Wednesday. That's off on the field as well as a recovery day. We'll go in on Thursday. That's going to be another offensive day, another upper body day. And it gives us enough time between sessions. So now Friday, which is going to be our trap bar lift and our acceleration day, is going to be another defensive day. Hit them with a high intensity stimulus. Now they have the weekend to recover before Monday. Going into fall ball, okay? This is almost like treating it in season. 7 weeks, October 1st to November, and you're training guys 2 to 3 days a week, depending on when you're scrimmaging. For us, like I said, the biomotor quality is being used the most is going to be the skill. The emphasis is the sport. So what it's going to look like is we're going to decrease the volume in the weight room because I want to make sure the volume is going to the field. And what we can do is we can still increase intensity, right? The poison is all in the dosage. And for us, what we're going to do is we're going to increase the intensity, all right, depending on how guys feel. If guys feel really good, we're going to let it eat. We're going to let them go. If they don't, we'll live to find another day. We'll find another day where they feel really good. Usually after a lift, after a high intensity training session, we'll do a lot of restorations, a lot of belly breathing, mobility work sprinkled in there, stuff to be able to make sure that the high intensities and the repeated efforts they're having on the field during fall ball, we're being able to micromanage that and being able to put them in a better position. Our position guys are going to train around their scrimmage days, which I'll show you guys here in a couple slides. And then our pitchers are going to train around their bullpen and their live schedule. So essentially a high intensity bullpen day is going to equal a high intensity day in the weight room the day following, or a couple of days following. And I'll explain that later. We're going to continue to train the foundation that we built in the fall ball, previous to pre-fall ball. We're going to continue to already build off that movement competency, being able to push a little more intensity, continue to move the needle during this time. This isn't a period to slow down. This is a period to still improve, just a lower dosage and a lower volume. So for our fall ball schedule for position guys right here, you can kind of see in black right there, this is the scrimmage that we have, or the scrimmage schedule that we have, with Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday being a slower scrimmage day, just to allow some of our guys to throw who have maybe got the opportunity to throw. So Sunday for us is a recovery day. Monday, I want to make sure is going to be a low intensity day because I want to make sure that guys are recovering between that high intensity scrimmage day and that high intensity lift on Saturday. So that's where we're going to test max velocity. Sunday recovery, low CNS, which is going to be an upper body movement. I'll take those two upper body movements that we did 4 days a week in pre-ball or pre-fall ball. I'll merge them together, maybe adding in a little more lower body accessories to take away from some of the high intensity days. We'll scrimmage on Tuesday, and then I'll hit another high intensity day on Wednesday, pending how guys feel or if we need to move days around. That's typically going to be a day where it's going to be our acceleration day. I know it says testing max V. It's a typo on my end. It's going to be that acceleration day, that trap bar day. It gives guys a little bit more time. I don't want to say it's going to be a primer lift, but it's still going to be an adaptation where it's not going to be as taxing as our max velocity lift just because we're adding in max V sprint work. That's the highest intensity you can get. Our acceleration day isn't going to be that, and it's going to be more bilateral. So guys are going to be able to be more in control of the weight, and they're not going to have to focus on any of the more isolated movements within the trap bar. For a fall ball schedule, okay, looks a little confusing here, right? But just follow with me, right? Each day or so each block is scheduled around the individual schedule. So for our Tuesday scrimmage, this is what our scrimmage is going to look like, okay? I know I said, hey, we want to make sure that our high intensity days are stacked on those days. When it comes to fall ball and when it comes to in season, it's a little bit different. Okay. The highest intensity day in season and in fall ball is going to be that live appearance, right? It's not going to be the high intensity day in the weight room. It's going to be that high intensity day in the game. So for us, for guys, for fall ball guys who are pitching on Tuesday, typically what I'll do is I'll end up doing a high intensity day a day after they throw. And here's the reasoning why. On that live intensity game, when you eventually get into season, these pitchers are throwing anywhere from 60 to 100 something pitches in a game. That's including in season. I'm talking about fall ball. That's not even counting the throws they have pregame, the throws they have in between innings. It all stacks up. It's high intensity outputs the body is going through. I guarantee you that many efforts of high intensity throwing are more taxing than a couple sprints we're going to hit in the weight room. So what I'll do is I'll do my live game, or the pitchers who this Tuesday guy is going to throw live on Tuesday. He'll come in the weight room the day follow. It's going to be a low intensity day. Flush out his body, allow him to move, do a little bit more mobility, being able to work on being able to get some strength back in the upper extremities, work the scap to end ranges of motion. And then that Thursday, we'll have that high intensity session, that max velocity session. All right. And the great thing about this with pitchers is that I'm not given Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday until they throw, right? That's 4 days before they see that high intensity live game stressor, right? I could easily give these guys the stressor on Tuesday, but the problem is that I'm doing more harm than good. On that live game, their body's so wound up after so many throws that at that point, throwing anything to them after that is going to be detrimental. So what I do is I rewire them the next day, and they still have 4 to 5 days to be able to recover. And then obviously the bullpen day to follow, it's going to be that primer, that high CNS lift. Obviously, guys maybe who need a little bit more are going to get a little more volume. Guys who maybe don't, a little more strength work, right? So that's the only caveat. The in-season model is a little bit different. I'm still looking at freshness. I'm still looking at high intensity stressors, but now I'm looking at, right, how can I be able to model this to make sure that our guys are going to be even fresher come their next throwing date, right? And that's how we kind of schedule it out. So you can kind of follow the same format about how I go about things, ranging from a Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Post fall ball. This is the fun time right here, right? So you guys are done fall ball. You guys have 4 to 5 weeks between November 4th to December to be able to train. It's back in the weight room 4 to 5 days a week. Now we're really spending a heavy emphasis on outputs, on development, right? So the speed work continues to ramp up. We're still sprinting from when we started off in August, even to now. Now we maybe up the volume. Now we maybe up the intensity because now these guys aren't playing or scrimmaging or practicing. Now they're going to be a little bit fresher because they're back in individuals. The program starts to take a little bit of a different shape into tiers. So now we start to push the needle with volume and intensity as the sport takes a backseat. So we're going to use VBT, we're going to manage outputs, and our foundation guys, what I'm going to talk about is they are going to use RPEs, a perceived exertion there. The program dispersed into athlete needs. So for here, it's going to look like training age, time in the program, position, injury history. So I usually have a couple of different programs on the floor. I'm going to have my foundation program, which is going to be a movement focused program. It's going to be our freshmen. The guys who come in, I usually like to take a slow cook approach where the guys come in. I like to spend a lot of time teaching them the main compound movements, the main things they need to work on, not really worrying about anything excessive. I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruits that you can have by focusing on the foundation program, focusing on the basics there. The foundation plus, it's going to be a little more strength dominant, a little more size dominant if they need it. It's taking that movement competency that we built over a year's time in the foundation program and now being able to add to it. And then we start to go into our advanced plus, which is just specific strength, rate of force development, power driven, bucketed, however you will, right? It's basically what the athlete needs at that time. My advanced guys, I don't typically shy away from still doing strength work with them. I think there's a big caveat to say that when an athlete becomes advanced enough, you take away strength now. Oh, they're strong enough now. Well, I believe that there are still multiple modalities to be able to train strength, like training that strength residual. I think that it's a quality that's typically taken away from when you get to an advanced program, but I think there's just a lot of different ways to be able to still train for strength in different modalities. So that's how we kind of go about bucketing guys a little bit. And I'll answer a question on the back end about that as well. Our holiday break, that's when guys go home. It's also finals week, okay? Stress is holistic. For this finals week, the human body and the brain can't separate the stressors that they're getting. So whether it's school, sports, the physical side or the personal side, the stress is going to be holistic. So a high intensity day in the weight room, a high intensity day on the field is also the same if a guy bombs a test or he's been stressing about a test or his girlfriend broke up with him, right? And so with finals week, where guys are too busy focused on finals and they're stressed out, I like to take back volume and intensity because the body's in such a constant state of stress. I'm going to give them that little bit of time off, pull back to where I need to, so that way then now guys can continue on. And then the training program will start to disperse based on guys who stay for a little bit. They'll still train with me in the weight room. And then guys who go home, I'm going to start to make a more general program because I don't know what guys have at home. Based on what they have, I'll make a program for them and make the adjustments. For the spring outline for the preseason, it takes a little bit of shape of fall ball and the in season as well. It's the preseason, all right? It's 4 weeks from January to February 15th or whenever you play. Usually about 2 to 3 sessions per week. You maybe sneak in a fourth one there, depending on if you're really early on. But as you start to get closer to season, not so much. You're programming around scrimmages, so it's the same thing as fall ball. It's a little bit ramped up. Coaches are ramped up. Coaches love to be able to really push volume and get after it. Come back from the holiday break. So you're going to see a lot of high intensity stuff on the field, maybe a lot longer practice times. High intensity and the different levels of development. So like I said, the bucketed approach, we're still going to have guys a little bit of a bucketed tier system here, kind of trying to squeeze the last bit out of them as we go into the end season. And for some of our guys, we're going to obviously hit a little bit of a strength residual prior to the season, just to make sure that guys are having that residual. And then we can kind of go from there based on when they need to hit it. Their pitchers, again, are going to train around the bullpen schedule. They're going to train after they throw. If we are playing inter squad scrimmage, it's going to take a different approach now where obviously in the fall ball schedule that I showed you guys, when they throw live, they'll take the restoration day, the low CNS day, and then they'll go into their high intensity day. All we're doing here is we're just preparing for the next 20 weeks. Find your main movements that you're going to do for the rest of your in season. Find them, coach them really well, hammer them in the preseason, work them to some higher intensities on those, and then stick with them for the rest of your time there. About this when we get in the season, but again, like I said, we don't maintain, we train in season. For me, when I look at the end season, I think that's the most valuable time of training that we're going to get throughout the year. It's 20 weeks of uninterrupted development to get better. And it's the most extended time where guys don't have a break or have vacation or winter break or Thanksgiving or anything like that. It's just straight up, we're playing. This is the set schedule. Let's get better. Let's cook when we need to, right? We're still sprinting, lifting, throwing, hitting higher intensities with lower volumes. I tell guys all the time, I want us to be the best version of us. I want us to be hitting PRs by the end of season, rather than us taper down and get more fatigue. And obviously that's dependent on the game schedule, travel schedules, but the mentality is there of, hey, we're trying to train and get better throughout the season. Games become the most crucial aspect, right? We need guys to stay fresh for games. So whatever I have to do in the weight room to pull back, I'm going to do, right? Typically, I'll talk about this. We use VBT for our guys, a lot of our starters to track velocity, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But we use that as a big chunk of our program to make sure the guys are staying fresh, to make sure that we're winning. Because for me, I tell guys and recruits all the time, like, I'm here to win ball games. I'm here to prepare you to put you in the best place to win ball games, to win a weekend. So at the end of the day, I can't have you fatigued if we just hit, an 85% session the week before a crucial rivalry weekend, right? I need to make sure that you are ready to play the game. Okay. Speed development will be microdosed throughout season. I'll usually take this. I won't typically pull out the timing gates. Maybe I will with some of our guys who don't play a lot, but I'll do our speed development on our Tuesday midweeks. So the Tuesday midweek when we do it, usually the warm up that I hit our position guys with, our pitchers with, will be a snappy warm up. It'll be a dribble, couple dribbles. I'll put out cones out to 25, 15 yards and tell guys, hey, I need a maximal sprint 1 to 2 just to be able to hit that biomotor quality and get their residual in, right? That's all I need. I just need these guys hitting a high intensity stressor for the week. If you're hitting it in game, if our starting right fielder had a really good game, a couple good appearances at the plate, covering a lot of ground, maybe I won't have him do that just because he's already hit that max residual for the week. But for the most part, 1 to 2 sprints isn't going to kill him. In the grand scheme of things, it's low intensity dosage, and they're going to be fine doing a couple of sprints right there. And finally, cook when the pan is hot. With VBT and how we go about things, I can tell when guys are pretty fresh, just based off VBT. The questionnaire they give me, a couple other methods that I'll tell you guys about. But if a guy's moving a weight that he hit a couple weeks ago at 70% for like a 65%, I'm gonna tell a guy, hey, let's take advantage of it. Let's if you're feeling good, let's go ahead and push it a little bit. I don't want guys to, I'm not gonna push guys when they feel, garbage. Now there are times where, hey, we need to be able to hit a max strength residual here. Weekend coming up where we need to be able to hit it. It's a lighter weekend. I just need to hit it, so we're prepared for the next couple of days. There is a day where we need that, but in the grand scheme of things, the guy is feeling really good. I'm gonna let him go. I'll give him a plus set on the back end. I'll give him a higher velocity. I'll tell him to go up in intensity, vice versa there. All right. So never just limit your athletes to what, maybe you have on the sheet of paper. Always be open to how they're feeling as well. And then a big topic as well, game day or day before lifts. For me, last season we did game day lifts and we did day before, depending on where we were at. It's about a 30-minute lift. Our high intensity, or not high intensity, our starters, they end up doing a quick lift. I mean, it's even shorter than 30 minutes. They get in, they do maybe a trap bar jump or a low intensity trap bar pull, an overspeed jump and a jump mat, compete with each other, and they get out. Our guys who don't maybe have high innings, they go in and they hit the whole workout. It's a little bit of a high CNS 2 workout where we're still getting better, even though maybe you're not playing a lot. This is kind of the mentality. And when I talk about biomotor qualities, when I talk about residual training effect, this is kind of how I go about things. Keeping athletes fresh in season. Okay. Like I said, it's all about keeping the guys healthy and performing their best so we can win ball games, right? So I need to understand when I can push and when I can pull in season, which is critical when it comes to maintaining that maximal strength residual and speed residual. So when I go about looking at our season when it's announced, I say, all right, what games or weekends do we need to be fresh for and play their best? And what games or weekends do we need to hit a residual and we can still get the best outcome, right? So for me, what I go, and this is a little bit of a crude setup, because when I first got in, I got here in January, so I only had a couple weeks to be able to do this. But for me, I just need to know, hey, what are the opponents that we need to be our best for, right? So What I do is I wave load and modify intensities to hit a strength residual within that 30-day window and reset depending on the opponent we play. So I'm giving you guys a good example here. We opened up with Maryland this past season. What I did is I took a win percentage based on similar opponents to us and computed that into a win percentage, and I mapped it out for every team that we played. And then from there, what I saw is if it was green, that usually meant that was a game where we typically needed to be fresh for, right? That's not a game where I need to hit a 85% effort in the weight room. That's a game where I need guys to be fresh and we need to go out and perform. Then you got a game, and week 4 where, all right, it's a little bit lower in terms of opponent win percentage. Now we need to be able to push the needle a little bit more. And we could push that 80% residual or 85% intensity to be able to have them hit that strength residual and then go from there. So again, this is how I go about things. I usually take, non-conference, conference. You can find a lot of websites out there that will actually compute the numbers for you and also compute the numbers between similar opponents to your teams as well as their teams. So for me, it's all about freshness. It's all about being fresh for the games we play. And so this is just kind of a good way that our guys really liked and a way that we go about making sure that we're good when we need to be. Tracking athlete readiness in season, again, very general, but velocity-based training. If you have VBT training, it's a great option right there. It's really good to be able to being able to put a velocity unit on a guy and see where he's at. The 70% I prescribe for him on his card, he might not be at that 70% the day he comes in. So you put on a VBT unit, I track where that window is in 70%. And then from there, if he's lower than that, I'll tell him to take the weight off. If he's higher, I'll say, hey, let's push a little bit up in terms of your metrics. Let's see what we can do today. Readiness questionnaires. I send out a questionnaire to guys every single day saying, hey, how do you feel? How was practice? Where are you at? I get those questionnaires back to me on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being I feel great, I feel amazing, best I've ever felt. 1, I feel like garbage. And I can see those, and when guys come in, I can create a conversation with guys. How'd you feel? Oh, well, if you saw I had a bad outing this past week, I can come in and kind of have that conversation with guys and do that. If not, you can simply go up to guys and ask how they're feeling. It's a simple one. You guys can do it if you're a high school coach. Just come in and ask, hey, how you feeling today to one of your guys? And you say, oh, I'm a little beat up today. You can kind of go from there. Any KPI metrics you have jump mat, force plates, timing gates, anything you have right there, you could be able to use that for tracking metrics as well. And then honestly, the simplest one, when I didn't have any of these metrics, when I didn't have VBT, when I didn't have KPI metrics, it's the eye test, right? If you're a coach, you're a strength coach, you should be able to know, if you've been with the team long enough, you should be able to know if you look at your guy and you see him struggling a little bit, it's a simple look, go talk to him, ask how he's feeling. If he's feeling like garbage, going up and asking him how he is, how he's feeling. If he's feeling pretty bad, he's feeling pretty banged up, maybe lowering the intensity, taking a set off, maybe even cutting a couple portions of the workout out. But from there, there are a lot of ways to do it. When I was at Elon, a lot of it was the eye test. A lot of it was going in and being able to look at a guy and looking how, hey, I programmed 70% for you. That 70% does not look 70%. Hey, let's take a little bit of weight off, right? It's being able to see the room and see the athletes that you're working with. For our position player schedule, again, I want to keep it brief. It's keeping guys fresh. When you can see in the gray here where our guys play Friday, Saturday, Sunday, plus the midweek, that's kind of how we go about things there. Usually after a Sunday game, whether that's a travel game, it's 3 days straight of a high intensity stimulus. I want to give guys a little bit of a recovery day. So we go our low intensity day. It's going to be a bench press, maybe some kind of posterior chain work. They're in and out in 30, 45 minutes. Nothing crazy. I just want guys to be able to make sure that they're feeling good so then we can play on Tuesday. Our high intensity day is going to go on Wednesday just because that is the furthest day away from a game that we will have. So that's going to be our split squat day, the day that we're going to hit maybe a heavier percentage in the weight room, depending on the opponent we play. And then our Thursday is going to be that primer lift on or before that game day. You can do it on a Friday, you can do it on a Thursday, brief 20, 30 minute CNS driven. I like to give a little bit of arm form on the back end for some of our position guys. Just make them feel good, confidence going into the game. That's kind of how we go about things. And that's how I've run things in the past when I've been anywhere else. It typically tends to work out. I don't like going the high intensity day on Monday because if you got a road trip, you're getting back late, you do that high intensity on Monday, guys are going to be fried. You're not going to get the thing that you want back, which is going to be that high intensity stressor, even if you're trying to improve throughout. Our starting pitcher schedule. We're going to go through, and what we'll do is it's again based on that throw live schedule. I talked to you guys through it through fall ball. Our Friday night guy, he's going to throw live. You look at the graphic down there. He'll do his recovery session. So in season, I like to do a full recovery session, full mobility session with the guys afterwards to return their body back to homeostasis. We'll do a high intensity lift on Sunday, which is the day after. So there's max V mechanics, maximal velocity lift. I'll give them a day. We'll go Tuesday, a low intensity lift, that upper body day, which is going to be that bench press day or whatever. And then we'll go Wednesday, Thursday. So they have 2 days up until they start. I'll usually give pitchers. I'll say this on Thursday. I usually give our Friday night guy a little bit of a primer, tell him to come in, hit a medicine ball throw, something along those lines, just something to get him going, something that he feels like he would be confident doing. The post restoration day, the day after a start, is going to be again restoring range of motion, targeting soreness, any other needs, etc. I typically like to give the starters a little bit more freedom. I like to ask them when they come in how they feel, if there's any specific spots they need, and then we start to work from there. But again, that with us having that high intensity lift on a Sunday, they still have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to be able to recover for their Friday start. And I haven't had any issues in the past with guys complaining of soreness or fatigue going into their next start. Relief pitchers, which is the last one here, right? Consistent training throughout the week. You have no idea when these guys are going to throw in a game. You can't tell little Johnny that, oh, you'll lift when you throw. Well, maybe he doesn't throw that week, and then he just didn't end up lifting that week. So what you have to do is you have to dose these guys, kind of like position guys, throughout the week. So we'll follow a similar structure. Monday will be low CNS, Wednesday that high CNS furthest away from games, and then a primer on that Thursday or Friday. And what I'll typically do is I like guys to have that consistent lift schedule throughout the week. It's lower volumes, it's higher intensities. Basically, when we need to, when we play certain individuals based on VBT and other things. And then on Thursdays as well, I like to have that, primer session for guys as well. For our high intensity guys, if you're a guy and you throw on a Friday and you throw a lot of pitches, I'll have the guy come in Saturday, hit a restoration session, makes guys feel good. Gets guys back in, gets guys moving, target a couple of different things that they may need to work on or some things they want to work on. And guys just confidently, feel they're better going into the next day. Couple small things, redshirt program. If you're not playing, let's get after it. Right? I think a lot of guys at times the redshirts gets lost to the side. Let's go 4 days a week. It's all about the gains, right? Training for a little bit of size and strength while it's still increasing speed and power. So basically, just like you're training in the off season, nutrition and recovery are a must. I'm always on top of them for nutrition. Our nutritionist meets with them all the time and going over that. Injury rehab guys consistently training with me and our AT. And then our low ending guys, obviously, if you're a guy who's not seeing a lot of playing time, like I said, you're going to do the entire workout if we're training. And if you're on that high CNS 2 day, that primer lift day, you'll do the whole workout. And it'll be basically a high CNS day where you're not doing a trap bar pull, you're doing an actual trap bar deadlift, similar to what we've been doing. So we're still training, we're still maintaining those guys, still getting them better. You're not just sitting on the bench. Finally, say thank you. I thank the people here in this list here. I wouldn't be the coach and the person I am today without the people in this list. It's not a complete list, but these are the people that have poured into me to allow me to be able to have the philosophies, the thoughts, and to how I go about training. So I'm eternally grateful for the people who have poured into me and that I can pour back into on the back end. So that's what I got there. Any questions? And if you want to follow me, you can follow me on social media at Lakey Hunter, or you can email me at hlakey@georgesouthern.edu. Love to talk to people, love to conversate, love to be able to chat. Anything you have or might want to talk about, shoot me a DM on Instagram or email me, and we'll find a phone time to chat. I truly want to give back. I don't want to gatekeep anything that we have, and I think as a field, we could do a lot better being able to conversate and have open conversations that we train. So thank you.
Hunter, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. That was killer information. Listen, for the folks that have questions, would you guys just go down in the kind of bottom part there of the menu and hit raise hands, and then I'll unmute you. But Mr. Healy had a few questions throughout. So Ty, I will let you jump in here right now if you don't mind.
Awesome. Thanks for being here and speaking. I really appreciate it. Just a couple questions I had. What do you mean by snappy warm up?
For sure. Yeah. So that's a good question. And a snappy warm up is usually a warm up where it's not going to take a lot of time. It's quick in reference to the fact that we're hitting the main things that we need to hit and we're getting out. I typically only do a snappy warm up on the days we're doing max velocity stuff. So for example, you can do your ankle, calf, knee dribble series. That's a pretty easy series to go through. Even some of your A series stuff like A skips, A marches, any of those, you can find those online. A lot of people end up doing those in their speed programs. It's just a quicker way to be able to prime the body. It's maybe not 25 or 30 yards. I usually do it within 10 or 15 yards instead. So it's just quicker back and forth, ramps the body up. And now let's sprint. Let's activate the hamstring. Let's go.
Awesome. And then can you talk more about your three station prep, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So the 3 station prep is actually a model that I got from a couple coaches. It's something that in season I utilize a lot for our guys, just because again, I don't want to give these guys a dynamic warm up. So what I do when I go about making a 3 station prep is you can do almost anything in this 3 station prep. I'm not going to program though, like a dumbbell bench press or anything like that. I'm looking for more accessories, more stuff that's going to prime them for the session, right? Because it is a 3 station prep is a warm up after all for these guys. So if I know that the session is going to be a split squat day where they're going to be jumping on a jump mat, they're going to be doing some elastic stuff. What I'm going to do is one of my 3 station prep exercises might be an overhead medicine ball throw, something that's going to be explosive, something where they're going to activate those motor unit recruitments and they're doing something explosive. So the first time they see an explosive movement in the lift isn't going to be in the lift. I'll usually throw in a mobility in there, maybe some guys who are complaining, maybe some T-spine, some hip, anything, the wears and tears you might see of a season. And then you can throw in basically anything you want on the third one. Like the mobility and the other preparation are kind of interchangeable, right? You can throw in a rotation. We do a pelvic rotation sometimes. We'll do bear crawls. We'll do, you can even throw in like side bends. You can even throw in maybe an accessory like Y's, T's, ERs in there, like something that's going to be low intensity to one, raise their body's core temperature like a warm up does, but also kind of get to where you want them to be and prepared for the session.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Ty.
And then please just go ahead and hit that raised hand. Mr. Ford, let me just make sure I can see you. Here we go, sir. Unmute and go right ahead.
Awesome. Am I coming through now?
Yep, absolutely.
Sweet. Awesome. I was just going to ask you a question about, I suppose, like monotony with keeping your main lifts kind of all year round. How do you find that there, I suppose, not necessarily the adaptation, but more the mental load that comes with kind of repeating that whole year through? Do you have any issues with that at all, or?
No, that's a good question there, James. I personally haven't had any issues. I think for a lot of people, and maybe this is my own philosophy and maybe just the people that I've been around, but personally for me, I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruits that come from being able to do a movement consistently throughout the year. Now, granted, here's the thing is that for my freshmen and my foundation guys, I assume is who you're talking about of doing the same movements kind of year round, whether that's a split squat when they start to where they end. I think for those guys, I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit on the table of them just getting really good and getting really strong at one movement that I think is usually really a lot of the time, what's the word? I think people are too quick to switch up on it. I went to TCU in my first time there, and Zach Dakent would program these guys doing front squats the entire time they're in the program, and guys are still seeing adaptation. Like everybody talks about adaptation of, hey, you got to change the main exercise, every so often. Personally, for me, I haven't really seen any type of changes there. You can maybe change it up in small other things, like if you're going to go hand supported, or if maybe you change up the modality, instead of them doing front rack, maybe they do safety bar, or something along those lines, or maybe you're doing a trap bar, and maybe for some of your guys, you want to do a split stance trap bar, like small changes here and there. Our freshmen will typically stay within the same movements just because I want them to get really good at it, but I haven't really had any issues in the past. Usually a lot of times the accessories and pushing the weight and them seeing improvements in their speed work and everything else kind of tends to do the trick when it comes to reducing the monotony of kind of going about it. If that answers your question, James.
Yeah, no, that was perfect. Yeah, I just found I've transitioned out of elite sport into the school system over in Australia, and where our school system is very, very different to yours, primitive almost. But I find our crew get very, wouldn't say bored, but they do waver in their attention. So sometimes it's very hard to get the middle end of the crew to actually start keeping their intensity where you want it. Your top end and your bottom end are really good at managing, but I find the middle end that they move okay, but they don't necessarily need too much cueing or work with. They seem to waver the more consistent our programs are. But yeah, no, that was just an interesting sort of question, I suppose, to see if you have similar issues and how you get around it. But no, that sounds
Yeah,
good.
no, that's perfect. I mean, and again, like for that, I'd say too is like I will say like I'll sometimes do some like again like our jump mat stuff is competitive to an extent. Like I tell guys like I want you guys to like chirp at each other, like I want you guys trash talking a little bit, like just because usually within a team setting like the guys want to compete, so I give them little opportunities to do that. Even if it's not maybe in the trap bar deadlift, like for us it's great because we have VBT, which is phenomenal because then I can have guys compete on that and I should see intent. But maybe if you're not getting the intent on that, like there's still like other like even when you have somebody PRing on a jump mat or talking junk on like those like you can make the connection like hey like we're utilizing this trap bar deadlift to be able to fuel this counter movement jump, right? Because we're the heavier we get, we're recruiting more motor units. Now we're trying to elicit higher jumps, and usually that kind of tends to stick with guys like all right, I'm going to have this guy talking to my ear here, like I need to be able to step it up, so
No, awesome, thank you.
yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, James. Any other questions? What else is on your mind, folks? Hunter, while we're waiting for a couple more hands, if they're out there, I did notice that weight room in those videos looks great. The layout looks fantastic. Tell us about how it is to work in that environment.
Yeah, it's awesome. And there are a couple of videos in there of Mississippi State's weight room as well, which is like that's but without a doubt the nicest weight room I've
That
ever
was
been
cool.
in.
That was cool.
It's one of its kind, there. And the great thing about it is we had not many facilities have we had 100 yards of turf right outside the facility, like indoor. So we could do all our sport work, medicine ball workout in the indoor turf. Like that was a luxury that I'm missing, certainly. But the one at Georgetown we have is top notch. I mean we have everything that we need here to develop guys as athletes. And the great thing about it is that I tell recruits all the time that this weight room, it's an Olympic weight room, but it's baseball specific as you can get, because the baseball room, I kid you not, is like 50 yards away from the weight room. So we do a lot of our speed work and then we go into the weight room after that. So it's a great transition from doing stuff on the field to go straight into the weight room.
Awesome. We may have another hand here.
Yep.
Ty, I'll go back to you if you've got another question.
Yeah, this is not really about the presentation, more about just your own personal advice.
Yeah.
What is your best advice for like a young strength coach looking to specify in baseball and get a college job like yourself?
No, that's a really good question. I'll say this. When I first started off, I actually didn't want to go into baseball. I played baseball for a while, but I was kind of burnt out and I kind of wanted to go into football. But my boss, Nick DeMarco at Elon, told me this. He said, if you want to get really good at this field, you want to be like, be able to conversate, to be able to talk to people, to be able to start to specialize, you have to know a little about a lot first before you know a lot about a little. So the first thing that I start off with is trying to understand and know anything and everything that I could about sport performance in general. Because I tell you this, Ty, is that sports performance in a way is very general, in the sense that between my soccer team, between my baseball team, the principles that I exude are the same in terms of maximizing high intensity outputs, high CNS, low CNS, vertical integration. It's all the same, right? When it comes to specializing, this is what I'll say, Ty, is that if you want to specialize, I highly, highly recommend finding somebody that you look up to who has the connections to be able to get you a baseball job and go and learn from them. For me, that went about moving across the country to TCU to work unpaid under Zach Dakin at TCU, who is, can't say enough good things about him. Great guy, one of my mentors, teaching me everything about baseball performance. Learned a lot from him, and then also, ended up, going elsewhere. And I was fortunate with where I was at, that, because I was at TCU when we had some baseball openings, at my school, I was able to bring in some good guys for the program. I was very fortunate, but obviously instead of me going to Texas A&M, if I didn't have good coaches like that, I would have gone somewhere else to learn from another baseball performance coach. So just kind of reaching out, finding internships, finding opportunities like this to learn, kind of connecting yourself within the world of baseball strength conditioning, which kind of isn't a thing, but kind of getting to know these coaches, call them up, pick their brains, get to know them, and kind of learning from them, I say, is the biggest thing, just to kind of get your foot in the door for baseball strength and conditioning.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And then James, I'm not sure, you may have had one more question.
No. Good. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm half working at an athletics tournament today, half on this. So I might have said something. Sorry.
No, perfect. Well, listen, we thank you. We went a little bit over just because presentation was awesome. Great questions. Hunter, we really appreciate all this information. That was phenomenal, like a master course. So thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom with us.
Absolutely. No, Landon, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you guys reaching out for me to do this. I'm grateful for the opportunity, and this is my first webinar too, so it's a good one here. I might hopefully try and do some more in the future, but we'll see. But no, I appreciate you guys again. Anybody who's still here, feel free to reach out to me. I want to help anybody I can out. I can't specify that enough. You want to talk about anything from training to personal development to just in general advice, like I was in those shoes at some point. So I want to give back to the field that gave back so much to me. So I appreciate you guys.
It's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you, Hunter. Take care, everyone. We'll be sending out an email with a link to the recording. So watch for that. Again, thanks, Hunter. Have a good evening.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. Have a great evening, and good luck to you guys this season.